The breaking point. Ryan Matthews stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, overlooking the glittering skyline of Manhattan, as his fingers drummed against the glass in a rhythm that matched his racing heartbeat. Behind him sat Emily, his wife of 7 years, her hands folded neatly in her lap as she waited for him to speak, but the silence between them had grown so thick it felt like a physical wall. She had driven all the way from their suburban home in Connecticut that morning, hoping to surprise him with lunch and maybe finally share the news that had been burning inside her for 2 weeks now. But instead she found herself sitting in his chrome and leather office chair, watching her husband struggle to find words. Ryan finally turned to face her, and the look in his eyes made Emily's stomach drop, because she had seen that look before on the faces of defendants in courtrooms when they knew they were about to deliver devastating news. The words came out in a rush, as if he had been practicing them like a script, and maybe he had, because they sounded too rehearsed, too cold to be spontaneous. He told her he had met someone else, a woman named Ashley Brooks, who worked as a marketing consultant for his real estate development company, and that what started as a professional relationship had evolved into something he could not ignore anymore. Emily felt the room spinning around her. She gripped the armrests of the chair so tightly her knuckles turned white. And she wanted to scream or cry or throw something, but instead she just sat there frozen in disbelief. Ryan kept talking, filling the silence with explanations that sounded more like excuses, as he mentioned how Ashley understood his ambitions in ways Emily never could, and how their connection felt fresh and exciting, unlike the comfortable routine his marriage had become. The cruelty of his words hit Emily like physical blows, and she thought about the pregnancy test hidden in her purse, the one she had planned to reveal over champagne and celebration, but now felt like a weight pulling her down into an abyss. She finally found her voice and asked him if he was sure, if this was really what he wanted, and if he had thought about everything they had built together over the past 7 years. But Ryan just nodded with a cold determination that told her his mind was already made up. Emily stood up slowly, gathering her coat and purse as tears began streaming down her face. And she walked toward the door without looking back, because she knew if she did, she might crumble completely. Ryan called after her, saying they could work out the details later, that he would make sure she was taken care of financially, as if money could somehow make up for the devastation he had just caused. As Emily rode the elevator down 40 floors, she placed one hand on her stomach and made a silent promise to the life growing inside her that she would be strong enough for both of them, no matter what came next. The aftermath. 3 years had passed since that devastating day in Ryan's office, and Emily had transformed herself in ways she never imagined possible as she sat in her corner office at her own tech startup overlooking the Boston Harbor. The pregnancy had been the catalyst that forced her to rebuild her life from scratch, because she refused to let her daughter, Sophia, grow up watching her mother fall apart over a man who had chosen ambition and vanity over family. Emily had used the divorce settlement wisely, investing in a software company that developed apps for small businesses, and her natural business acumen, combined with relentless determination, had turned that investment into a multi-million-dollar empire. Meanwhile, Ryan's life had taken a different trajectory, as his relationship with Ashley began crumbling within months of their wedding, because the excitement he had chased turned out to be nothing more than shallow attraction without substance. Ashley had wanted the lifestyle that came with being married to a millionaire, but she had no interest in the long hours and dedication required to maintain that wealth, and their arguments became more frequent and more bitter until she finally left him for a younger, wealthier tech entrepreneur in Silicon Valley. Ryan found himself alone in the same penthouse where he had once stood so confidently, telling Emily he wanted something different, and now the emptiness of those rooms echoed with regrets that kept him awake at night. He had tried to reach out to Emily multiple times over the years, sending letters and emails that went unanswered, because she had blocked his number and built walls around her heart that seemed impenetrable.
What Ryan didn't know was that Emily had heard about his failed marriage through mutual friends, and while a small part of her felt vindicated, mostly she felt nothing, because she had moved beyond the pain and found strength in her independence. On a crisp autumn evening, Emily received an elegant invitation to the annual Riverside Charity Gala, an event she normally avoided because it attracted the same social circle she had left behind when her marriage ended. But this year was different because her company was being honored for its charitable contributions to women's entrepreneurship programs, and declining the invitation would seem ungracious. Emily stood before her bedroom mirror, trying on the emerald green gown her assistant had picked out, and barely recognized the confident woman staring back at her, because she had shed the insecurity and self-doubt that once defined her. Beside her on the bed lay another invitation, this one for her date, Jack Carter, a successful venture capitalist who had been pursuing her for months with a patience and genuine interest that slowly melted her defenses. Jack was everything Ryan had not been, attentive, thoughtful, and genuinely interested in Emily as a person rather than as an accessory to his lifestyle. And while Emily was not sure she was ready for love again, she appreciated his steady presence. As she fastened her diamond earrings, Emily took a deep breath and reminded herself that tonight was about celebrating her achievements, not dwelling on the past. But somewhere deep inside, a small voice whispered that fate might have other plans.
The reunion. The Riverside Charity Gala was held at the historic Belmont Hotel, where crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows across marble floors, and champagne flowed as freely as the conversations among New York's elite. Emily arrived with Jack by her side, and immediately felt the weight of curious stares because her transformation had not gone unnoticed by the society crowd, who remembered her as Ryan Matthews' quiet, devoted wife. Jack's hand rested protectively on the small of her back as they navigated through the crowd, and Emily found comfort in his steady presence, even as her heart began racing with an anxiety she could not quite explain. Across the grand ballroom, Ryan stood nursing a scotch and listening half-heartedly to a business associate drone on about market trends, when something made him look up and his breath caught in his throat. There she was, Emily. But not the Emily he remembered, because this woman radiated confidence and power in a way that made everyone around her seem to fade into the background. Her emerald gown hugged curves he remembered too well, and her hair fell in soft waves around shoulders that no longer carried the burden of his betrayal. And beside her stood a man who looked at her with obvious admiration. Ryan felt his chest tighten as jealousy surged through him, mixing with regret and longing in a cocktail of emotions he had spent 3 years trying to suppress. He watched as Emily laughed at something Jack said, her face lighting up with genuine happiness, and Ryan realized he had never appreciated that laugh when it had been his to enjoy every day. Emily sensed his gaze before she saw him, and when their eyes finally met across the crowded room, time seemed to stop, as 3 years of separation collapsed into a single moment charged with unspoken words. She had prepared herself for this possibility, had rehearsed in her mind how she would react with cool indifference. But seeing Ryan standing there, looking older and somehow smaller than she remembered, threw all her preparations into chaos. Jack noticed the change in Emily's demeanor and followed her gaze, landing on Ryan with an understanding that came from the many conversations they had shared about her past. Ryan began moving through the crowd toward them, as if pulled by an invisible force, and Emily's first instinct was to flee, but she forced herself to stand tall because she had nothing to hide and nothing to be ashamed of anymore. When Ryan finally stood before them, the air between them crackled with tension and unfinished business as he opened his mouth to speak, but the words seemed to stick in his throat. Emily spoke first, her voice steady despite the trembling she felt inside, as she greeted him with the politeness reserved for distant acquaintances rather than the man who once promised to love her forever. Ryan's eyes searched her face desperately, looking for any sign of the woman who had loved him unconditionally, but all he found was a stranger wearing Emily's face, and it terrified him more than anything ever had. Confronting the Past. The applause thundered through the ballroom as Emily delivered her acceptance speech with grace and eloquence that commanded respect from everyone present, including Ryan, who stood transfixed by every word she spoke. She talked about resilience and second chances, about building something meaningful from the ashes of loss, and though she never mentioned him by name, Ryan felt every word like a knife cutting through the armor of denial he had built around himself. After the ceremony, guests mingled on the terrace overlooking the city lights, and Emily found herself cornered by well-wishers congratulating her on the award, while Jack had stepped away to take an important phone call. Ryan saw his opportunity and moved through the crowd with determination born of desperation because he knew this might be his only chance to say the things that had been eating away at him for 3 years. When he appeared beside her, the small group around Emily seemed to sense the tension and politely excused themselves, leaving him alone beneath strings of twinkling lights that seemed to mock the darkness of their history. Ryan started with an apology, his voice rough with emotion as he told her he had made the biggest mistake of his life and that not a day went by when he did not regret walking away from their marriage. Emily listened with arms crossed, her face an unreadable mask as she let him pour out his remorse and confessions. But inside her heart was racing, because hearing these words once would have meant everything to her. He told her about Ashley's betrayal, about the emptiness that consumed him when he realized too late what he had thrown away, and how he had tried to reach out but understood why she had blocked him from her life. When he finally fell silent, Emily took a slow breath and looked him directly in the eyes with the steadiness that came from years of rebuilding herself, piece by painful piece. She told him that his apology, while perhaps sincere, came 3 years too late because she was no longer the woman who needed his validation or his love to feel complete. Ryan's face crumbled as she spoke, and he asked about their life together, if everything they had shared meant nothing now, and Emily felt a flash of anger cut through her composure. She reminded him that he was the one who decided their marriage meant nothing when he chose another woman over the vows they had made and over the family they could have built together. The word family seemed to hang in the air between them, and Ryan asked quietly if she had moved on completely, if there was any chance she could forgive him enough to let him try to make things right. Emily hesitated, because despite everything, despite the pain and betrayal and years of rebuilding, there was still a part of her that remembered loving him with every fiber of her being. But before she could respond, Jack appeared at her side, his presence a reminder of the new life she had built and the future that lay ahead, rather than the past that had nearly destroyed her. Ryan saw Jack's hand slip around Emily's waist with easy familiarity, and something inside him shattered completely, because he realized he was not just competing with another man, but with the life Emily had created without him. Jack suggested they should leave as he had an early morning meeting, and Emily nodded, grateful for the escape. But as she turned to go, Ryan reached out and gently caught her wrist. He asked her for just one more chance to prove he had changed, to show her that the man she once loved was still inside him, buried beneath the regret and mistakes, but desperate to make amends. Emily pulled her hand away and told him that she would think about it, but made no promises because she owed him nothing and owed herself everything. As she walked away with Jack, Ryan stood alone on the terrace, watching the woman he loved disappear into the night and wondering if he had just lost her forever, or if somehow fate would give him one final opportunity.
The choice. 2 weeks after the gala, Emily found herself sitting in a coffee shop across from Ryan, who had called her office every day until she finally agreed to meet him because the unresolved tension was affecting her focus and peace of mind. He looked different, somehow more humble and less polished than the confident millionaire who had once dismissed their marriage as if it were a business deal gone bad. Ryan had brought photographs, old ones, from their wedding and early years together, and as he spread them across the table, Emily felt memories wash over her with unexpected force. He talked about specific moments captured in those images, the day they moved into their first apartment, the vacation in California where they had stayed up all night talking about their dreams, and the morning he had realized he wanted to spend forever with her. Emily listened as he dissected his mistakes with brutal honesty, admitting that he had been seduced by ego and the thrill of conquest rather than any real dissatisfaction with their marriage. He told her about therapy sessions he had started attending, about the work he was doing to understand why he had sabotaged the best thing in his life and how he had learned that running towards something new was really running away from his fear of becoming ordinary. When Emily finally spoke, she told him something she had never shared before, that she had been pregnant when he left her, and that he had a daughter named Sophia who was now 2.5 years old. The color drained from Ryan's face as the revelation hit him like a physical blow, and he sat frozen, unable to process that he had not only destroyed his marriage, but had abandoned his own child. Emily watched emotions play across his face: shock, grief, rage at himself, and finally a desperate pleading that made her heart ache despite everything. She told him that Sophia was happy and loved, that she had built a good life for them both, and that bringing him into their daughter's world now would require trust Emily was not sure she could give. Ryan begged for the chance to be a father, to know his daughter, and to prove that he could be the man Emily and Sophia deserved. But Emily reminded him that this was not about what he wanted anymore. Jack had been patient and understanding when Emily told him about the pregnancy revelation, and he had made it clear that whatever she decided, he would support her because he cared about her happiness above everything else. But Emily could see the concern in Jack's eyes, because opening the door to Ryan meant inviting chaos and uncertainty into the stable life they were beginning to build together. Over the following weeks, Emily watched as Ryan showed up consistently to every meeting she agreed to, bringing thoughtful gifts for Sophia and asking questions about parenting with genuine interest rather than obligation. She saw glimpses of the man she had fallen in love with years ago beneath the layers of regret and desperation, and slowly, painfully, she felt the walls around her heart begin to crack. But she also saw Jack's unwavering support, his kindness toward Sophia, and his respect for Emily's process, even when it meant watching her spend time with the man who had broken her. One evening, as Emily tucked Sophia into bed, her daughter asked about the man and the photographs Ryan had given them, and Emily realized she could not keep building their future on the foundation of secrets and protection. She invited both Ryan and Jack to Sophia's 3rd birthday party, knowing that the decision she made would change all their lives forever. As the party unfolded, Emily watched Ryan interact with his daughter for the first time, seeing wonder and love transform his face, while Jack helped organize games with the same patience he showed everything. In that moment, Emily realized the truth that had been forming in her heart for weeks, that forgiveness did not mean forgetting, and second chances did not erase first mistakes. She pulled Ryan aside and told him he could be part of Sophia's life because their daughter deserved to know her father, but that the romantic love they once shared had been buried beneath too much pain to resurrect. Ryan's face showed both gratitude and heartbreak as he accepted her terms, understanding that some betrayals leave scars too deep for time alone to heal. Emily then found Jack and took his hand, telling him that she was ready to move forward with him because he had shown her what real love looked like: patient, kind, and unwavering even in uncertainty. As the sun set over the birthday celebration, Emily felt peace settle over her because she had finally made choices based on strength rather than fear, on hope rather than regret. Ryan would always be part of their lives as Sophia's father, but Emily's heart belonged to her future with Jack and to the woman she had become through surviving her darkest days. The cruel betrayal that had once shattered her world had ultimately led her to discover strength she never knew she possessed and to find love that honored rather than diminished her.